And welcome to Football Game Plan's starting lineup, our fantasy football show. I'm Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook, always alongside my teammate and my good friend Chris James. Chris, how you doing this afternoon?
Doing all right. After last week's show's opening, I had to sport a little McMahon Mustangs love today on today's show.
I love it. I got to give me some McMahon gear. I just have the helmet and my old jersey, and maybe some shorts from when I coach, but I gotta get my McMahon gear up. If you're out there, McMahon, listening, watching, shoot the store over our way, and we'll start buying some stuff up and start promoting the Mustangs properly here on this show. Speaking of promoting properly, I want to give a shout out to all of the sponsors that we have on our Football Game Plan YouTube channel and all that good stuff like that. But Chris, last week was just ridiculous, man. All of the injuries that happened in the NFL. What was your takeaway from that? And how do you navigate that in fantasy football? I feel like everybody got hurt and is out for the year.
So, you have injuries happen once in a while, and they'll happen to starters and first-round picks. It's very rare that you get the number one and number two consensus guys going down the same week for at least a month each. Saquon done for the year. So now you've got Michael Thomas who's been out. You don't know what Devontae Adams is going through with that hamstring yet. There's a lot of first-round picks that are out, and a lot of other guys with soft tissue injuries and ACL tears, even on the defensive side of the ball. So this has been a crazy season with no preseason. We're wondering if that had some impact on guys getting a little loose before going full bore out there and ended up with these severe injuries.
Yeah, like we talked about off air, you have a Christian McCaffrey on a touchdown play, and you realize that's the play he got hurt. You're like, really? That's what injured you and knocked you out for what, 3 to 4 weeks probably?
Yeah, he's trying to come back from what I've heard a little sooner, but they're looking at a 4 to 6 week injury right now. And with how Saquon came back off a high ankle injury last year early, maybe they actually hold him out knowing that they're not a Super Bowl contender this year.
Even Jimmy Garoppolo had a high ankle sprain. I know a lot of his injury came from scariness and just compounded, on the fact that he got hit while he was in the pocket. It was just weird to see quarterbacks now with these injuries. But enough about the injuries. People want to know how they can help their fantasy football team win. Obviously, that changes things now that you're on the waiver wire. So starting with the quarterback position, who you're out there trying to pick up this week to help out your fantasy squad?
So there's a couple of guys. There's one who came in, and we don't want to talk about injuries, but the oddity of what happened to Tyrod Taylor, please go ahead and look that up on your own. But that got Justin Herbert thrust into action, and he did really well. Listen, Justin Herbert's tailor-made for fantasy football. Big, strong, more athletic than people want to give him credit for being. And that's what he's going to do. He's going to use his legs. He's going to complete some passes, but I think he's a good pickup for this week. The next guy as a quarterback is a guy who, I didn't give requisite love to because he regressed last year, and that's Mitch Trubisky. So far this season, he's done the job. It can continue because his opponent this week likes to give up all the points. And then the third guy is a guy who I don't think you realize that an injury to his running back will actually be helpful to his fantasy perspective, and that's Daniel Jones. This week they play San Francisco, and we're used to San Francisco having an elite defense, but they're so banged up where this is a Daniel Jones tailor-made huge week for the Giants.
Yeah, they don't have Bosa, they don't have Ford, they don't have Solomon Thomas, they don't have Richard Sherman. They're beat up defensively. If the Giants don't at least win, or if Daniel Jones doesn't throw for 350 plus yards, they're in big trouble this year. Moving on to the running back position, it's interesting because when you look at the waiver wire running backs, a couple of people hit me up already, text messaging me, asking, who do I pick up? I'm like, yo, wait for the show. Chris gonna get you right, and trust his answer because I don't know for sure. And plus, it's too early in the day. We may get another ACL injury, knock on wood, before this show hits air. But all jokes aside, Chris, who are you looking at the waiver wire for running backs?
So if you all picked up the guys from last week, they're no longer available. But this week, there's a surefire guy, Mike Davis. Listen, he's going to go into that offense. That offense is going to have to put up points. He already had, 7 or 8 receptions this past week. So he's a guy to pick up. I'm sure you've heard that other places as well. But Myles Gaskin, look, they haven't had the most successful running attack, but he actually looked like a viable NFL running back last week. They get the Jacksonville Jaguars this week, so he may be able to put up some numbers for you. And then the third guy is more of a flyer, and that's going to be Jeff Wilson Jr. I think in this offense, they're going to continue to give the ball off. Nick Mullins will probably start. Wilson Jr. is going to get the goal line carries, and I think he's going to get more work than people realize as Jerick McKinnon, who has missed 2 full seasons, kind of gets eased in there. They're not going to give him the full load, and I think Jeff Wilson Jr. gets some run this week.
I love how San Francisco try to blame the turf at MetLife as if the Giants and Steelers didn't play a full-fledged game the week before with no injuries.
I
So
would say their lineman did go down with an ACL. Steelers.
oh yeah, he did.
Yeah.
He did. So maybe they are onto something. So, you know, that's why everybody should go to grass. I think everybody should go to grass, to be honest. You know, field turf looks nice. I understand it from a financial standpoint. It's, you know, you don't have to do anything. It's maintained perfect all year long. But they have to go to grass. Grass is just best for the old ligaments.
Yes.
Wide receiver. There's a guy that I'm looking at on the waiver wire, but he has to get elevated from the practice squad to the active roster. And I don't even know if that's going to happen, but if he does, I know he's going to ball out, and that's a receiver for the Giants. But I'm not going to even mention his name because he's not active. He's on the practice squad. So who's some of the guys you're looking to waiver wire for at the receiver position?
So this guy should probably get picked up season long because this is going to be a three-head attack as soon as they get things going with this offense, and that's Scotty Miller. Still like the fact that Tom Brady looks for him, period. That's all that matters. He's going to be the exterior receiver. Either Evans or Godwin will get the rolled coverage or the best corner on the team, so Miller will be a season-long pickup, but he should have a good week too. Another guy I'm looking at is Michael Pittman Jr. Unfortunately, Paris Campbell, his career has been beset by injury already, he's out. Pittman Jr., big, strong, physical guy, he gets a chance. And also, a guy who's a sneaky pickup this week against Tampa Bay, and that's KJ Hamler. Listen, Cortland Sutton, probably done for the season at this point. Jerry Jeudy's still working some things out. KJ Hamler could be a guy who they're going to look at Jeudy with their best cover corner, probably, Carlton Davis. So expect Hamler to work well, especially out of the slot.
Yeah, moving on to the tight end position. And if the Jets are smart, they try to feature their tight ends right now against Indianapolis. I doubt that's going to happen. They're going to try to throw outside, try to run the football. They're not going to have success. They're not going to win. The Colts right now are at -11 in Vegas. That's ridiculous for an NFL team to be an 11-point underdog. But looking at the tight end position, Chris, who are some of the guys you're keeping an eye on?
So because of his athleticism and also the injury to Jack Doyle, I'm looking at Morale Cox as a pickup this week. Phillip Rivers will get more familiar with him because they will be throwing the ball. Logan Thomas is a sneaky little pick because not only does he play tight end for the Washington football team, they can also use him as a little wildcat near the goal line, a la Taysom Hill, because former quarterback. And then the third guy is Dalton Schultz, who took over for Blake Jarwin. Dallas is starting to get more comfortable using him. They want to spread the ball out, and so he'll be the beneficiary of a great passing attack.
Yeah, we mentioned Dalton Schultz on the show last week, and he goes out there and scores a touchdown. I like the little tidbit you gave about Logan Thomas. That's how you design offense. You got to utilize everybody's skill set. Don't be fooled by that 82 number that he's wearing. He was a former quarterback. Now, you were out there in Vegas, Saints Raiders. That Saints defense, I thought, was the strength of this football team going into the season, and that defense looked lifeless. After they had that 17-7 lead, defense couldn't stop a nosebleed. He couldn't tackle anybody, didn't want to tackle anybody, and had so many bonehead mistakes. So it's safe to say, well, I want to ask you this. Are you bailing on the Saints defense right now after what you just saw on Monday night?
So I am bailing on Saints defense, but not because I don't think that there'll be a good NFL defense for the rest of the year. Their schedule is horrendous. Look, they play 3 good offenses in division. They have to play the Packers this week. And during the playoffs, they have to play Kansas City. So their matchups are just horrible for them. They have to play San Francisco when they finally get, I think, mid-season, week 8 or 9. So it's just the schedule is too tough to depend on them. You can take them as a flyer in certain weeks, but you can't use them season long.
All right. So on the waiver wire, which defense you targeting?
So I'm looking at 3, and I'll make it quick. I'm looking at the Arizona Cardinals. They've really stepped up and played better since they've got more talent infused there. And Detroit is still trying to figure out what they need to do on offense with no Galladay. That's probably going to be a problem. I'm looking at the Broncos against Tampa Bay. Now, listen, I know that people think that's crazy, but look how well they played against 2 really good offenses in Tennessee and against the Steelers this week. If not for that big 84-yard touchdown where he stepped out of bounds, honestly, this is a different game. So expect that Tom Brady and these guys will struggle a little bit this week at Denver. And then also the Browns. Look, the Washington football team and Dwayne Haskins will eventually be a good offense. Dwayne Haskins will eventually be a good NFL quarterback. But right now he's still learning the nuances of the game. And I'm telling you, this Browns front will get after him. It's not a good week for Haskins and company.
Yeah, that Washington offense this is Haskins' ninth start, and their offense, I've said this before, all throughout the week, they look like they're just running plays and not running an offense. And
right.
That looks sloppy, especially when you run up against a very good defense. It really can halt what you're trying to do, which makes that Eagles game look even more shocking to see that, Washington was able to have some success moving the football. And they had some success late, but by that time you're down 3 scores and it doesn't really matter. So it helps out fantasy-wise. But you're right, the Browns defense did look ferocious, and they're going to get better. They're going to get healthier, and that's going to be the scary part. So we'll step away for a quick second and be back with more Football Game Plan's Fantasy Football starting lineup. Be sure to order your copy of the Go-Go Offense by Coach Brennan Marion on footballgameplan.com/GoGoOffense. Coach Marion goes through the ins and outs of his explosive offense, one that's tearing up the college football field and putting a lot of points on the scoreboard. Again, you can order your copy at footballgameplan.com/GoGoOffense. And welcome back to Football Game Plan starting lineup. Emory Hunt, Chris James. Follow us on social media. I'm at FBall Game Plan on Twitter. Chris is at CJ Florida9 on Twitter as well. Chris, we're going to do something called buy or sell. I'll toss out a name, and you tell me whether you're buying or selling for the rest of the season. So this is not for just this week, but for the rest of the season. So we already talked about the Saints defense. I know your thoughts on them. You made some great points, but let's start on offense with the running back, Frank Gore.
So this is going to be a buy. It's a soft buy. So understand what you're getting out of Frank Gore. Probably the most consistent running back in the NFL that doesn't do anything explosive. He's going to get 15 to 20 carries. He's going to get you 60 to 80 yards, might get a touchdown, and he'll get a couple of passes and a couple of receptions in the passing game. Frank Gore should be on your roster as a bye week fill-in and also as a guy who is a high floor, low ceiling guy. And understand this, even when Lev Bell comes back, Adam Gase loves him some Frank Gore. He's probably going to be the starter for the rest of the season.
Yeah, and we'll start to see some emergence from LaMichael Pirine, a rookie they drafted out of Florida, who's a pretty good back himself. So you may get some timeshare at the position. Buy or sell D.D. Westbrook.
So this is a full-on sale, but a stash. So he's been inactive for back-to-back weeks as a healthy scratch. They clearly have some sort of issue with the front office and D.D. Westbrook. I'm not saying that because I have any information, it's just the looks of it. I said stash him because I think he's going to get traded to a team like a San Francisco or a team like Green Bay. And if he gets traded to one of those teams, especially Green Bay, he's an immediate wide receiver 3 with some upside because the talent's there. There's just a lack of communication, it seems like, between him and the organization.
That's a good idea. It looks like that's what they're doing. They say injury and he's not really there yet, but come on, man. I'm pretty sure he wants to play, but that screams we're trying to find a trade partner. Yeah. One guy that's definitely planted where his feet are is Steven Sims out there in Washington. You're buying or you're selling?
You know what? I'm actually going to say buy, especially if you have some room on the bench. Let's say you were lucky like me where I was able to get Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams in my draft. I'm not taking them out unless they're injured. So a guy like Sims, you put on your bench because once this Washington offense gets rolling, he's too fast, too explosive, and Dwayne Haskins will eventually throw the ball around the yard. Right now, he's just a wide receiver 5 with some upside, but he can work his way to a wide receiver 3 with upside.
All right, we're going to do some true or false, too. We're going to toss in true or false along with buy or sell. So true or false, the Rams offense will stay this hot all season long?
Going with true. So a couple of things behind this. Offensive line is playing a little better than this year because they have less injuries. But the other thing, last year they tried to recreate something that wasn't there anymore, the Todd Gurley experience. So they forced their hand while also trying to manage him. This year, they don't care. It's just a committee. Whoever is the hot hand gets it going. And they've done more with letting Jared Goff do what he does well. Play action off of that, throw the ball on crossers. I think they'll remain hot because they're healthier and they're less reliant on their former superstar.
Yeah, and they're giving everybody the football out there in LA. Yep. True or false? New Giants running back Devonta Freeman will ball out this year.
I'm going to go with false. So Freeman has been a fantasy star in the past, but there's several things that come into play here. Freeman hasn't really completed a season in forever. Okay? He's got to get acclimated to the game of football with the Giants. And also right now it's committee and it probably will be season long because unless Freeman has this juice that he used to have 4 years ago, I don't think he's going to take it over. So don't expect that to be a guy who's going to bring it to a championship this year.
All right, going back to buy or sell. Now, this is buy or sell prime for a turnaround. So someone that's sort of not doing what we expect them to do in the beginning of the season, and we expect them to turn it around pretty quickly. So buy or sell Todd Gurley.
So I'm going to say sell, and I'm going to start here. Volume is king. We talked about this. But he's gotten 14 and 21 carries in the last 2 weeks. As a team that's already said preseason they're trying to manage his injury, it's clear that they have some sort of issue that's going to be suffered down the way. And also, I would end up, if he scores a touchdown this week, which is quite possible, look for a trade partner. Maybe you can get someone to pop because another star has had an off week. Maybe a Joe Mixon is a guy that you can trade for because he's got better days ahead of him. I just think you sell on Gurley because that knee's not going to hold up.
Yeah, and I mean it's tough, man, because that's a name that you could dangle out there and get some really good return for that trade. Buy or sell Emmanuel Sanders.
So I'm gonna say buy, especially if you have an end of the bench spot, because it's gonna be hard to get worse than 4 receptions through 2 games as Emmanuel Sanders. Right now, the biggest issue is what he does well, working well in the intermediate and long game. Drew Brees can't do, or at least hasn't shown he can do. So I would buy Emmanuel Sanders, knowing that Michael Thomas, when he gets back, will open things up. And also, number 2, I don't think it's happening anytime soon, but if Jameis Winston ends up getting that call up, Emmanuel Sanders is an immediate wide receiver 2 because of what he can do down the field.
I mean, and you bring up down the field because Brees' arm is legit shot. And that's something that was evident in that Raiders game.
Said it on the internet, and I'll say it on here. I challenge him to a throw off.
You'll win that one by at least 15 to 20 yards, man. All you do is throw a 30-yard pass. Buy or sell Deshaun Jackson from Philadelphia.
So initially, this was a sell for me until I realized something. Injuries are concerned. Jalen Reagor was the reason it was a sell, but he's going to be out for what looks like a month plus. So buy Deshaun Jackson because he's the only healthy, consistent receiver in this game. He's going to be up and down for you. He has that injury bug, but until he gets injured, he's going to be a viable fantasy football player for you, especially in, let's say, the flex type position.
And one more true or false, because this has been something that has been burning my grits all throughout the season since this dude got there. So true or false, Ronald Jones will remain the guy in Tampa in that backfield with Fournette all season long.
So I'm going to start here. I think Bruce Arians did not tell a mistruth for week 1 because he was the guy for week 1. Then you saw this week what happened. His carries went down, I think, from 17 in week 1 to like 7 this week. And that being the case, he also had the backup running back, scored 2 touchdowns. The talent is on Leonard Fournette's side. Him learning the playbook is on his side as well. Once he's fully acclimated, Ronald Jones will unfortunately be a droppable piece.
And Fournette had that. And this is what people don't understand about Fournette. You saw it in the game against the Panthers. He can break long runs. He has broken more long runs than Ronald Jones has. He's a game breaker. People look at him and think he's just a 3 yards of a cloud of dust guy. No, Fournette gets a lane and he can scoot. So I'm with you. It's going to take as long as he continues to play and gets acclimated to the offense. Now, granted, credit to Ronald Jones for accepting the challenge and playing well, but you can't keep the big dog on the bench for too long because it's going to be evident that he's the better player and he's going to get out there and produce like he did last week against Carolina. So
130-pound dude who runs 21 miles an hour in a straight ahead. You want those problems to be not in front of you.
Exactly. And it's funny because it's like a guy you rarely see him get caught from behind. So he's able to hit that top speed and maintain that top speed until he hits the end zone. So he's a very good player. I don't think people give him enough credit for what he does bring to the table. We'll take one more break, step aside again, and be back with more football game plan starting lineup.
Well, the game of football has taught me so many things, man. Now, think about the huddle we have right now, right? I tell people this all the time. There's a reason why they call it a huddle. People have been huddling all their lives, trying to find ways to enhance each other's lives. great teams do that all the time. The great teams do that. The better the huddle, the better the team. And so it's simple, man, how if you huddle for all the right reasons, we wouldn't have Ferguson. We wouldn't have some of the challenges that we have in our society. But as we all know, there's always a moment when somebody doesn't belong in the huddle. And yet we have to continue to move on. We got to continue to play. So the game of life, man, is always starting with the huddle. And for me, I'm lucky enough to know that, by the graces of God, man, it's been a nice huddle. It's been a nice huddle. And if I just keep making sure that he's in front of me, I'm gonna be all right.
And welcome back to Football Game Plan starting lineup. Emory Hunt, Chris James at FBall Game Plan. He's at CJ Florida 9. Subscribe on YouTube at youtube.com/Football Game Plan. Subscribe on iTunes to Football Game Plan Podcast. Leave us a 5-star rating. That's at soundcloud.com/FBGP Podcast. And it's also, again, like I said before, on iTunes. All right, Chris, now it's time for your starting lineup. So as we're looking at your starting lineup for week 3 in the NFL, talk to me about Nick Chubb and what you're expecting for him as they take on a very good front four in Washington.
Okay, before I jump in on Chubb, I do want to say something because I was asked a question. When I say start or sit, I could go and say Ezekiel Elliott every week, right?
Right.
My starts are people who I think are going to exceed their projection. The people who I say sit will not reach their projection. It's basically just, I want to tell you about people who I know you'll have on your roster, and whether or not, unless you have a better alternative, whether you should sit them, start them. So that's what this is. You get out of my mention sometimes with this. Well,
that's a great explanation, man. That's a great point because yes, you would start Ezekiel Elliott every week, yeah. But this week you're expecting him to really go off.
Right. So with Nick Chubb, so people want to know what happened in week 2 and is Nick Chubb in a full committee? Listen, Nick Chubb is the starting running back. The starting joker piece is Kareem Hunt. It's two different things. Nick Chubb against this front four, they're going to continue to try to pound away at Washington. And eventually, Washington and those pass rushers will get tired of trying to go after a quarterback who doesn't have the ball. So he's going to get 20-plus carries, and we know he just needs one to break. I think in a game like this where they'll score enough points, they'll continue to pound on that Washington defense, and they'll eventually get tired in the fourth. You might get 2 or 3 touchdowns out of Chubb this week, considering.
Yeah, I swear, if the Browns just stick with the run, they'll beat everybody on their schedule except Baltimore. Looking at your sit-em list. Now, this is interesting because when you look at everyone on this list, I'm pretty sure you can make a great case for everybody, but I'm going to ask you to make the case why you should sit America's quarterback, Josh Allen, who's coming off 2 of the best games of his career. First game, he threw for 300 yards in week 1, first time in his career. Then he follows that up by throwing for over 400 yards. Are you kidding me? And now you're saying sit him against the Rams. Explain yourself.
So I'll say sit him against the Rams because of the following. In the first game, he played against a team that did not, I don't want to sound mean. It didn't look like they tried. Let's go ahead and be honest. It looked like no one tried on that defense. And then last week, to be candid, there was a lot of blown coverage over the top, and he took advantage. The young man has played really well. Why I made the statement to start this is versus projection is he's looked at as a top 3 quarterback this week. This Rams front four, especially Aaron Donald, will get in his grill. His favorite target, Stephon Diggs, which has done really well this year, will be facing Jalen Ramsey. Those are some problems. So what I'm saying here is, while I think Josh Allen will have a commendable game, and you don't have to sit him, if you expect him to go off like he did in weeks 1 or 2, you're probably going to be very upset with the 225 yards passing, 50 yards rushing, and 1 total touchdown that he might put up this week, considering the defense he's playing.
That's a great case you made for him, man. I just want to hear your reasoning because you're right. He's been going off, but you also have to take in consideration the opponent, and this is a step up in weight class, and we'll see how he does. Now, before we get out of here and wrap up the show, you got to give me some sleepers. So give me some guys that you're wanting people to say, hey, keep an eye on these players because they could blow up this week. These are my sleepers.
And yes, these are full-on sleepers. They're probably not on many rosters, if not your roster. So my sleepers this week, I'm going to go with Mitchell Trubisky against the Atlanta Falcons. Until I see the Falcons not give up 39 points, I'm starting almost every quarterback that they play. So if you need a fill-in for Tom Brady who hasn't shown up so far, this is a good week to pick up Mitchell Trubisky. From a running back perspective, mentioned him earlier, Jeff Wilson Jr., I think that he can end up having 2 touchdowns for you. Again, he's an extreme flyer, but at the same point in time, this could be one who goes off this week. As a wide receiver, Michael Pittman Jr. Listen, the Jets are covering no one. This guy runs legit 4.4 type speed. He's the type of guy who can take a short pass and get it down the field. He's another flyer for you. And at tight end, legitimately, same game, because I think all the points will be put up by the Colts this week, and so does Vegas apparently. Mo Alley-Cox. Again, they're getting close. I think that you'll see a guy like Phillip Rivers looking for that tight end position, a safety blanket, and he could be the guy. As far as a sneaky defense this week, who could be a sneaky defense this week? I think I mentioned them a little earlier, but I'm going to go with the team that had a terrible first 2 weeks from a defensive perspective, the Cleveland Browns. I think that they can actually show up this week because until that Washington offense gets going consistently, I think the Browns are a defense that you can stream this week and actually get some good production out of, maybe double digits.
2 things. One, you realize the 49ers scored on the first play of the game, an 80-yard run against the Jets last week.
My guy, who if he didn't get that turf monster grabbing that hamstring, or if, was it McGlinchey, whoever decided to hold a dude for no reason, he would have had a second touchdown. The Jets are
they're in disarray right now. And number 2, did you see how Denzel Ward put the clamps on AJ Green? So imagine the matchup between Ward and Terry McLaurin this week. That's gonna be must-see TV.
Forgot they're if I'm not mistaken, they're old school teammates. I think they might have been teammates at the same time. Maybe one was a junior and one was a freshman. So I think they're familiar with each other.
That's a good tidbit there, Chris. That's why we bring you on the show. So again, follow all of us on social media at FBall Gameplan, at CJ Florida 9. That's Chris James. I'm Emery Hunt. Subscribe on YouTube, youtube.com/Football Gameplan. Hopefully you have a great and healthy week out there. Wear your mask, root for the Cajuns, go McMahon High School football team if you're out there playing, but you shouldn't be because it's phase 2. And also make sure you stay socially distanced away from everyone else. And please wear your mask in public. But as always, subscribe, like, follow. Hope you got the advice that we give you and take it, and run with it. And we'll see you guys next week.